Hey guys, this is Evan Dukas with the Colorado Garden, and today I would love to show you how to make a pretty simple, cheap, and effective hoop greenhouse or hoop house. The really neat thing about this is because of the flexibility of the PVC, the design can be really flexible and it can be custom fitted to whatever your needs are. In fact, when I constructed these 8 feet by 4 feet raised beds about 10, 11 years ago, I wasn't thinking greenhouse or hoop house. But it worked just perfectly, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Also, what's really neat is since I constructed the greenhouse portion about 8, 9 years ago, you can really see how this is holding up to Colorado, Mountain West, high wind, very severe, strong sun type of climate. So let's talk about the materials and how it's done. So with an 11-foot width from about here to there, I wanted the top arched ribs to be about double that, maybe double or a little bit less. This worked out perfectly to use two 10-foot PVC ribs. This PVC is Schedule 80 conduit. It's that typical type of thing that you find at Lowe's or Home Depot. Okay, it's 3/4 inch. Okay, so 10 foot, Schedule 80. And then some of the other materials that we would need are 2 different types of connectors. Those are found right here. One is kind of a cross connector, 3/4 inch PVC. And this would be a T connector, 3/4 inch PVC. And what we did was we used pipe straps. These are also 3/4 inch. These are called galvanized pipe straps. Okay, one here, one here. So we use the pipe straps to connect them to the sides, which by the way, this is about 12 inches high if you go all the way down. I've kind of mulched a lot of it because I'm building soil for a food forest here now. But yeah, so we connected it to the wall, and then over here we connect it with a T connector here. Okay. And as you can see, it comes back down on the other side. It's that simple. What I did was actually, I would take 2 like this, and then I would connect each one. Okay, and then really push it in all the way. Sometimes they'll kind of give you a little bit of resistance. Then another important, very important factor to this whole thing, and what I believe really gives this design a lot of its structural integrity, is these cross pieces. And the way that we make these, if you can see there, I know it's a little bit darkening, but what we would do is use these connectors, right? And then we would take another piece of that Schedule 80 PVC and cut it to size. So this is one piece here. This is not continuous because if you remember, so these are T's. So this is 4 pieces connecting at this spot here. And the way that you measure this is it should be the exact width or distance from the end of one to the end of the next, however, spaced out you would like them to be. The least amount of space, the more strength in your design. So if this was about, I believe it was about 19 inches from here to there, it would be about 19 inches from here to here. Okay, and the way that I would cut these was, I believe I just used a box saw because I didn't have any power tools in my arsenal at the time. Now I would just use a simple miter saw, but there are multiple ways you can cut it. Even a coping saw, simple hand saw would usually cut this type of plastic. So at the end, each end, I have a T connector here, 1 and 2 all the way at the end, and every one in the middle are these cross connectors here. And the way that I put this together was that I did this kind of thing, okay, and I connected each one like this, okay, and I didn't do any of the middle pieces yet until after. And then at the end, so I only had these ribs, it takes a little while, you have to bend it slowly, attach each one. But then at the end, I took these cross pieces here and then connected them from here to here. Just to show you the distance from one to another. They kind of run along here. Okay. And this is just a beautiful design. It has held a whole lot of snow, and it's held up to a lot of our really strong winds that we get here in Colorado. Also, another thing, this is optional, I believe, but I decided to do it just because of the extreme climate that we live in, and I was afraid of snowpack, kind of getting on top of the plastic when I put the tarp on, and really weighing it down. I decided to create a sort of internal structure here for structural integrity. And what I did simply was to just use spare 2x4 lumber, and I screwed them. I kind of hit it, kind of hammered it down as much as I can go. But again, this is 12 inches down, and in intervals, I screwed it into this main piece of wood. And you can do that with whatever you have for your wood raised beds. Again, this is probably optional, but it works pretty well. What I did was also connect some kind of cheap, scrap wood lumber to here and to the next one here, which goes down and does the same thing. And I figured, number one, these things can rest on here. I could also kind of fasten them with zip ties or rope or whatever you have here to fasten them. Right now, they're loose. And again, if it really needs to bear any kind of weight, it will rest onto these because these are built right up to the ribs. And another really nice little benefit of this extra structure here is you have yet another sort of rack to use. As you can see in the past, I've used string or twine to go ahead and string up my tomatoes here, which because of this deep mulching method that I've covered in previous videos, these tomato starts will be, they will get up to 12 feet high. So it's really nice to have this extra stuff here. Although, even if you did not have this, you could probably still use the ribs to go ahead and tie something onto them. Another benefit of these ribs, or just having these ribs, even if I don't have the plastic on, is because it gives some sort of trellis support for plants such as these overgrown hops over here. Also, like I said in the beginning, this is very customizable to anything that you have. Technically, I can use this material to create a small protective hoop greenhouse over just this bed if I wanted to. Again, using the same kind of principle of maybe double the width from here to here, or maybe a little less than double, just bending perhaps just one pipe at that point, or cutting it in half and using the same principles with the connectors in the middle. In this case, since I had 4 different raised beds and they were spaced apart because I wasn't planning on building a hoop house at the time, I kind of retrofitted by putting these guys in here and just kind of connecting them to create a wall so that I can use my 3/4 inch pipe straps and continue the ribs. Okay, now that we've kind of established how to construct a pretty simple structure with the ribs, I would like to talk about a covering. This was about 11 feet by about 20 feet, 25 feet, maybe a little bit over 20 feet. And what I needed when I did the math was from here to here, I needed about 20 feet of tarp or covering. And from here to there, about 40 feet, because remember you want it to be coming down all the way and have that extra to kind of work with and close both sides. So what I did was I went online and I found a pretty heavy clear tarp. What I wanted was something with grommets. That was really important because I was going to use these to go ahead and hook them down and fasten them to the bottoms of each raised bed wall. And what I did to do that was I used these, I believe they call them grommet or tarp grommet bungees. And I used these to kind of hook them onto the bottom of these guys right here. Because if I go all the way down, there's a little bit of space, and that grommet bungee will kind of hook right there. Another little trick too is I would kind of put the grommet bungee through the hole, and then kind of fit it in the space here too if it was too hard to get down there. What you could also do is use just simple hardware hooks and just screw them into these guys, and that would probably be even easier, but I was a little bit lazy to do that, and this worked just fine. So once I was able to get my tarp all the way over, up and over, unraveled, I had a whole lot of extra hanging down, and in order to kind of cover the whole thing, now I could have cut out the tarp to here and then attached the tarp and made kind of a door using this frame. But since I didn't want to be bothered with that, I just kind of used that extra flap of tarp and I folded it over and I connected it to one of the ribs and covered it using these guys. If you have a whole bunch of these you have these nice, little rubber tips. They won't make holes in the tarp, and they're cheap as well. All these materials are cheap. In fact, I forgot to mention these PVCs right now, they're going for about $3 each. But these will really just give you what you need. If you need to lift the tarp because it's getting warmer out on both sides or one side, you can easily do that by rolling it up and using this to connect it to the rib. So there you have it. That's how we construct the greenhouse or the hoop house. A few little pointers and a few observations after almost 10 years of using this. Number one is if you do live in the mountain west especially, where it's a really high altitude and the sun is really strong like it is here in Colorado, I actually really suggest, number one, finding a really good quality tarp. But even then, so this is a really thick mill tarp. I forget what it was, but it was about $110 at the time. And look what the sun does to it after some years of using it. And honestly, it was like a couple of years. It's expensive, and it actually begins to disintegrate the tarp itself. If you're down at sea level, you probably won't have as much of an issue with that. But what I do recommend, and this is just true with any hoop house, is that you use it for season extension. So if your last frost date is about halfway through May, let's just say, you could really get this in the beginning of April so that you can start your plants early. And the same on the other side of the growing season to just really extend that season. But if you have this on all year, you will go through a lot of tarps or a lot of plastic. Also, I might add, anytime I do raised beds, I will probably always build a structure like this, because even if I'm not using that tarp as a season extender, in this case I don't anymore, only because I actually constructed an on-house greenhouse using recycled windows for a more permanent structure. I have other videos on that you can find. But even if I don't use it, there are other great benefits. Like we said before, this kind of becomes a nice structure for, like, as a trellis for vining plants that really just want to climb up. I've done this with beans, red runner beans, things like that. But also, like I mentioned, it's really great for hanging things down and really stringing things up to give you more to work with. Also, here's a really neat little secret. Now, this is beginning to rust a little bit, unfortunately. I need to get a better mesh cloth here. They call it hardware cloth or caging. But this is a really neat hail guard. And this is, again, unique to the Mountain West. But if you're in an area that is prone to hail, this makes a great hail guard because this is letting everything else in, rain, sun, air, except if it decides to hail, you will have wonderful protection. In this case, I'm protecting my tomatoes from hail. And so this is to about here. Usually the hail comes from the south, so it works, but I can complete this whole thing with caging to use as either a hail guard or a pest guard, by the way. And then also I can still put the plastic or the tarp on top of that for my season extension. I really hope that you guys found this helpful. This was really a blessing to me to be able to complete. It's extended a lot of seasons. It has lasted through some great storms, literally. And I hope that this will help you a lot in your planning and just in some clever ways that you can construct an awesome hoop house. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And I'd also love to hear what you think. And we'll see you next time.